Um, really looking forward to being able to share with you what we're seeing in strategy. I wanted to first and foremost, do an overview of our strategic planning program because we're doing a lot of cool stuff in strategic planning these days, working with a lot of companies. It's getting to that time of the year where people are getting out of summer and they're saying, oh, you know what, we need to get our teams aligned. One of the other things that I'm seeing right now is because of all of the, we'll call it uncertainty in the world and what's happening and the dynamic changes. A lot of people are kind of adapting to air quotes post-COVID life. The economy is doing some fun and interesting things. And I think a lot of organizations are reflecting how they can put themselves in the right position to adapt, to be able to be successful with the changes that are going on, not only, to be successful in the external marketplace, but internally, with talent, all of the changes and challenges that are happening there. It's a really interesting time to do business. And so I believe that strategic planning is a tool that can help you as CEOs, you as leaders, increase your effectiveness, but really it's about putting the right structure in place to support your team. So think of strategic planning as a framework to help your team accomplish what you want to accomplish, help your team stay focused, to create guardrails for your team to be able to move forward. And for those of you that are already doing strategic planning, you're looking for some new tips and tricks on how to improve your potentially alignment or implementation. I'm definitely there for that. I know a lot of you have said, hey, we're thinking of doing strategic planning and wanting to move that forward. So I definitely want to answer that for you. And then I also have some people that are like, hey, I'm interested in the implementation. How do I get some of those core pieces together? So first, I want to focus on, how we look at strategic planning alignment and strategic plan creation, walk you through our process a little bit, talk to you about methodologically how we look at things so that you can borrow them if you'd like, incorporate them into your own organization. As promised, everybody that attends today will get our one destination scorecard. So I'll make sure that I share that with you as well. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Happy to answer. I know we got some folks on YouTube as well joining us today. So I'm excited for that. So let's go through it. So what I wanted to actually start with today is who we work best with. And why I like this is because as a company, we want to make sure we're working with people that we can help and be successful. This is my friend Micah. He does some great work down in the Texas area around Clifton Strengths Finder. So I use him as his picture because he's pretty handsome. But I think it's indicative of the kind of people that do well with strategy when they can buy into it. So for us at SME Strategy, and if you're considering working with us, are you running a business that's $10 million or more? Are you concerned with business growth, sustainability, legacy? Are you entrepreneurial and people focused? Do you want leadership team capacity? Are you coachable, willing to change? Are you value focused? Do you see strategy as optimal? And if you are you looking for a partner and a trusted advisor? So if you're on the call today and you're saying, hey, I'm looking for somebody to work with on my strategic planning, this is who we love working with. That's who we deliver the best results for. So if that's you, you can keep listening. If that's not you, that's okay, because strategy is for everybody. It just helps to be able to move that forward. I was on the call today with a manufacturing company in the East Coast, and they said, I said, how are you guys doing right now with your strategic plan? Or actually, I said, what do you want to get out of strategic planning? They said, I want to be able to have better communication. I want to have my second level leadership, know what's going on. I want our leadership team to be clear. I want everybody to be clear on the goals and actions. And I said, okay, great. You're probably at a 5 if we measure that on a scale of 1 to 5. And I said, well, where would you say you're at right now? It's like, well, we don't have a lot of that stuff. And I said, okay, well, maybe you're at a 1 or a 2. And so if you're watching this call today, I want you to consider for yourself and ask yourself, what do you want to get out of strategic planning? What do you want to get for your organization as an endpoint? And so I'll actually give you a minute or two to think about that and say, hey, if you go through the process of strategic planning, if you go through a concerted effort, a focused effort of driving strategy forward, what would you want as a successful outcome? And you might, for yourself, you say, hey, I want, more revenue. I want more profitability. I want greater collaboration. I want less stress. I want whatever it is. But do have something at stake out of today's call. So you say, hey, this is why I'm here, because my job is to help you get what you want. So I'll give you a minute to say, okay, these are the things I want. Create a couple bullet points. If you feel like sharing, please feel free. If you were to get everything you wanted out of your strategic plan, what would that be? So as I look at strategic planning with organizations, because we see hundreds of organizations every year, we do, about 50 or 60 strategic plans every year. And we see people in one of these 5 stages. Some people are like, hey, do we even need strategic planning? Like, why do we need this? And that might be you today. We might have somebody say, oh, yeah, we had a strategic plan. We did one, 3 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And it's kind of still good. I was like, okay. Some people are like, hey, we have a strategic plan and we're aligned and we know where we're going. And that's great. And that's, like a really great place to be. If at least you have a direction on where you're going, that's fantastic. The next level would be getting alignment with the plan where your staff has action items and that there's a culture transformation. So you're starting to put the processes, systems, and structures in place. And then the kind of holy grail of strategic planning, and I'll make the distinction between planning and implementation, but the holy grail of kind of organizational success is that you're in the zone of performance management. You got monthly and quarterly KPI measurements that are aligned strategically, and then your action items are tracked and measured. So you're doing both operational and strategic successful things. And so my goal today and how we work with clients is to help them get to that place. This is a wall of logos to show you that we've worked with a lot of people across a lot of different places. Home for me is Vancouver, Canada, but I travel across Canada and the US. Our leadership team does, and our strategy team does strategy work all over the place, virtually or in person. So if you're not necessarily in Vancouver, but you're somewhere in the world, we can definitely work with you if you're looking for a strategic planning partner. So the biggest challenge that we see, so I'll move us away from strategic planning, but the biggest challenge that we see is what we call the multiple destination trap. The multiple destination trap. And it's really what we solve for as an organization. And the idea is that there are too many options, there's too many choices, and as a leadership team, as a management team, as an organization, you're stuck basically saying, hey, should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this? Now, that might come for a bunch of different options. It might be that the world has changed and you're having to react to it. It could be that you've actually gotten to a new level of success and then you have all of these opportunities. Whatever the reason is that more often than not, if you're thinking of doing strategic planning, you've got too many choices and you're not sure of what to do. And the reason we call it a trap is because so often organizations and leaders spin around in circles because they're not sure of what to do and they're not sure of what to work on. Now, as a CEO, somebody leading an organization, you might be in that trap or might have that perspective. You say, hey, where do I go? But where it really gets tricky and sticky is when you cascade that down into the leadership team. How does the leadership team, your leadership team, know where to go, what to focus on, what they should do and they shouldn't do? And then drop that down to your middle managers. How do they know what they should do and they shouldn't do? And then drop that down to your frontline employees. What should they do and not do? And what's really painful about that is that instead of confidently picking one of the options, most people will do nothing because they're risk adverse. Human beings avoid looking bad. We avoid making bad decisions. And so instead of picking one decision, moving it confidently, we're going to bounce between each, be like, should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this? If any of you have seen like a lion tamer, like an old school lion tamer, back when you could have like a lion at a zoo and they'd have like a hat on, big hat, and then a whip and then a chair, and they'd have the chair with the 4 points of the chair sticking at the lion. And apparently the story goes that the lion would get distracted by focusing on all 4 points of the chair at once. And in the process, get paralyzed into indecision. And so if you're on a leadership team and you're saying, well, I'm not sure what to do, or you feel like you don't make progress on issues, or you spin around in circles, then consider you might be in the multiple destination trap. And that's your real problem. It's not that you need a strategic plan per se. It's that your team is stuck and you're not able to make decisions confidently and move forward towards what you want. And so what is the cost of that trap? So the cost for you to reflect on is Is there uncertainty? Is your team not sure the best things they need to do to move forward and move the business forward? Is there lack of progress? Are you as a leader saying, oh, there's not enough progress, or either making no progress or slow progress towards important milestones? Is there lower engagement? Do you have some boredness or apathy? Do some people who want the status quo don't want to change? Some people feel disconnected to the core of the organization. The Great Resignation was evidenced by this, because people didn't know how to win. They didn't know how to succeed in their organizations. They got frustrated and they left because a different place gave them better purpose, better opportunities, etc. Or as a leader, do you have stress? Are you needing to micromanage? Are you needing to put out fires? So I'll share this both as you say, hey, oh, actually, yeah, we have all of these things. Well, it's probably because you're in the multiple destination trap. And if you're trying to kind of sell strategic planning internally, highlight the pains that are experiencing. What are the problems that exist in your organization that strategic planning would solve for you? The ability to have greater focus, the ability to be clear on where you're going, and to move confidently through challenging times. Again, especially in 2022, which is where we are now, there's a lot of uncertainty. And in uncertainty, you can't really sit in it. You'll kind of slowly sink. You need to make decisions to move forward to be able to get through that. So how do we approach that? So when we talk about strategic planning, I want to share how we look at strategy development. So there's basically two parts. There's alignment and capacity building. Okay. So the alignment comes in a couple levels. First, we need to align around the vision. Are we aligned on where we're going? Are we aligned on our mission? What we're doing and who we're doing it for? Are we aligned on our values? How do we do things? How do we show up? You would have heard culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I believe that to be very, very true. And we do an exercise in our strategy offsites where you say, one world will get you to where you want to go if we live our values, and one world will not if we live our values. That's how powerful values and behaviors are. But those are organizational structure things. Priorities, focusing on a couple things, doing them really well, and cascading that to goals and actions. And at the end of the call, I'll show you the agenda that we use over 2 days and the process that we follow. But really, that's the outcome of our alignment program. So when teams hire us to do a 2-day offsite or virtually over a couple sessions, then we make sure that there's alignment and clarity of vision, mission, values, strategic priorities, goals, and action. One thing I'll say about the goals and actions is we're not talking about a laundry list of activities that are going to take you into the next 3 years. If you think of the vision of 30,000 feet, the strategic priorities at 10,000 feet, and the goals and actions are the things you're going to do over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months to help you get to where you want to go. And when you have the right goals, then you don't focus on the actions, you focus on the outcome. Did we get the outcome or not? If we didn't get the outcome, keep going. That's kind of how we look at strategy and have it be more adaptive than prescriptive. So that's the alignment piece. Now, the capacity building piece, which I'll talk a little bit about later, is really what we look at as being a prerequisite for successful implementation. We don't look at just, hey, did you do a bunch of stuff as part of strategy implementation? But we rather think about it as do you have the skills and capacity to get to where you want to go in each of these areas? So if you think of your organization, and if you think of any kind of challenges or problems that might have come within your organization. So maybe communication isn't working. Maybe the people aren't doing what they wanted to do. Maybe you're not focused like you wanted. Maybe, there's overlap and all of that stuff. It's probably because your organization's ability to deal with those challenges hasn't grown equally to the challenges themselves. As in, if you went from 100 people to 200 people, your communication structure no longer supports it. If you went from 20 people to 50 people, well, maybe your previous values, behavior, and culture structure doesn't support your new level of performance. So what we look at is saying, how can we build the environment around the plan to support you towards that future place? So happy to dig more into what that looks like from an implementation standpoint. But if you're watching this, you say, hey, how do I lead implementation? How do I lead strategy? First, get the alignment around those core strategic planning things. And then second, I invite you to look at the environment around your plan. Okay, so the first step in strategic planning is aligning your team. And so I'm going to talk to the CEOs and the senior leaders in this room because typically you're the ones who are shaping the strategy. Okay, So first step is to get your leadership team aligned. The CEO or executive director needs to be clear on where they're going, and then they need to align their team. So look back at your paper and say, okay, success for us looked like, perfect communication. It looked like, profit and revenue growth. It looked like a seamless process. It looks like I can take a vacation and I can just spend hours on my Peloton all day. Whatever success looks like to you, golfing in Hawaii, that's what you're working towards, and then making sure that your leadership team is aligned on that. So aligning vision, mission, values, strategic priorities, goals, and actions. Keep it simple. That's the outcome. Now, when we talk about cascading the plan, so you think that there's organizational vision, mission, values, etc., and then you can think of cascading the plan as your sub-teams within that your sub-teams themselves or your sub-functions, marketing, sales, finance, operations, HR, they all could have their own vision, mission, values, strategic priorities, goals, and actions. But more accurately, it's about how do each of the functions play their role in supporting the larger organizational vision. I use metaphors and stories a lot in my teaching. And so if you like football, or you don't have to like football, just understand it, is that, there's the football team, there's offense, defense, and special teams. Everybody plays their role, but it's all towards the goal of the one company or the one team. And this also applies, let's say you have a group of companies, you're the parent company and you have sub companies, then you can use this model to say, okay, this branch does this branch does this branch does this location does this, etc. So first and foremost, align your team and your strategy. Now, once you're aligned, you need to move towards your one destination. Now, the problem is most CEOs, so if you're a VP or you're on the senior management team, you can say, hey, does this happen with my CEO or not? And if you're a CEO, you can reflect and say, hey, does this happen with me? Most CEOs are a couple steps ahead of their leadership team. It's just in their nature. They have to think ahead. Unfortunately, they don't always bridge the gap between what's in their head and what's communicated with the rest of the team. And so they sometimes get frustrated and say, don't you know we're supposed to do this? Like, aren't you reading my mind? And so the CEO needs to be able to go with his team. Okay. And so sometimes that's a frustration piece. Sometimes entrepreneurial minded people, they move really fast, but you have to go with others. And so the key part for CEOs on this call are, you need to develop your leader's capacity or your team's capacity to implement strategy. You need to be able to foster and develop that alignment between you and them and each other, responsibilities and accountabilities, who's doing what and where, and making sure that that's clear all the time, not like a gray zone. Communication. Do you have the systems, structures, interdependencies to support your plan being implemented? Tracking, monitoring, reporting. Are you measuring the right things? Do you have the gas gauge going from 0 to 100? Values, behavior, and culture. Are they supporting your future vision, not the vision that you had in the past? And then leadership and change management. As you move these changes forward, are your people equipped to drive forward the change? So it's not just you having to do it, but you're moving your team with you. And that's a key part. The other key part is that's relative to where you want to go. So you might have successfully built this structure at $10 million, but now you're trying to get to 50. Well, do you have the system, structures, and processes to be at 50? If you're at 100 and you want to get to 300 million, it's going to require an order of magnitude much more significant in terms of alignment, communication, change management, culture, values, behavior, tracking, reporting. The more complexity you have, the more systems you need to support the complexity. So as a CEO, you need to be with your leadership team and bring them along the journey. It can't be you and then them. It's like the we together, moving forward, growing together so that everybody has the common language, common understanding, common expectation that is going to support that future business. Now, I'll warn you that in my experience, I've been doing this 12 years now. As the company grows and builds in its sophistication and builds in its processes, builds in its systems, builds in what it needs to get to that next level, some people are not going to want to keep going. You are almost certainly going to lose people along your strategy journey. Because let's say the organization gets to this point and they're just here, they're not meeting that threshold, and that's okay. Like having people leave because of strategic planning is a good thing, because you've raised the standards of your organization and those people are unwilling to meet the new standard. So keep in mind that it's going to create an environment that is either going to support people or it's going to make it so they can't thrive in that. And they're going to say, if I can't thrive in here or it's too much for me, I'm going to get out. But the good news is that others will, because winners want to win. And when you create the right environment for the right people and you create a structure and a system for them to thrive in it, they're going to step up, because they know how to win. They know how to be successful. They know how the game works and they know the score. So strategic planning is not just about picking tasks and doing them and focusing. It's about creating the environment for your people to thrive at scale. The right system, structure, processes to help you accomplish your one destination where you want to go. And then making it so that others can clearly step into that and to be successful. That's what leadership is. So as the team improves, so will the business. Their ability to grow and manage the business is a function of that investment in training and development. And then the key part is that you keep building, you keep supporting that environment until you get to that one destination. The goal is only the end point. So when I look at strategy and I'm working with teams and I'm being a little bit pokey, proddy, and challenging people, it's only because I know that they have that place they want to get to. And I'm saying, hey, you're either getting closer or further away. So do you have the right structure systems to help your team get to where you want to go? And that's the only thing that we're trying to do. So when we think of strategy creation, give them the direction, vision, mission, values, strategic priorities, goals, and actions. That's number one. If they don't know where they're going, they're never going to get there. So out of the strategic planning process, that's the outcome you're looking for. Somebody said, asked in one of the questions, they said, hey, what if they don't like the strategy team that's leading this? And my answer to that is, well, you probably didn't give them something that's worthwhile that they want to buy into. You're thinking about it from your perspective versus thinking it from them. So create a direction that people want to go to. And if they don't want to go to it, well, they're not going to go. You can't drag them kicking and screaming. So figure out what is the direction you're going to, get your leadership team aligned around it, and then move forward. But also make sure that they have the skills to get there. Again, metaphors. Let's say there's an island 10 miles away and my leadership team can only swim 6 miles. I'm not going to send them to go. They're not going to make it. And so if your goal is to get to whatever that next level is for your business or your company or organization, does your leadership team, including yourself, have the skills and capacity to actually make that trek a successful one? If not, scale back a goal. So the alignment, the responsibilities, accountabilities, communication, tracking, monitoring, values, behavior, and leadership and change management, those are the skills that you need to support your organization. So we go back into kind of core strategic planning. This is one of the challenges that I see facing all organizations, whether that's because you've gotten a lot of success or you just can't say no to stuff, is they try to focus on too many things at once. Entrepreneurs have this thing called shiny object syndrome. Okay. Entrepreneurial CEOs have shiny object syndrome. They don't say no to stuff. They say yes to stuff. And then they expect to say, okay, I'm going to add more. And you should do more with the same amount of resources. Doesn't make any sense. And so as an organization and as a leader, you have to say, hey, what are we going to focus on? So I'm going to just pick the column on the left for now. So imagine that you have 10 different priorities and they all live in the same building. It's a 10-story building, which means that if you've got 100% of your time, you've got 10% time, money, energy to put into each. Well, the problem that most people don't realize is that every time you take the elevator or the stairs to move to a different floor, you lose time, money, energy in focusing, getting reorganized, getting set up. And so you lose valuable resources in switching cost. The other thing that's really hard about this when we think about it from an organizational perspective is that how do I know which of those 10 things I'm supposed to be working on if they're all priorities? And I get stuck in that trap again. Should I do this? 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 And you spend so much time wondering and making decisions versus confidently moving forward. And so strategic planning is about choices and saying, hey, what are the things we need to focus now that are going to provide the most direct route to where we want to go, based on our needs, based on our wants, based on market conditions, based on all the things. Right now, what I'm seeing with a lot of clients, talent development, attraction, retention is a big one. Business model adoption and change is a big one. Managing cost cutting is a big one. Alignment, organizational alignment, because a lot of the people that we work with, they've grown. They've taken on a lot of businesses, but they've kind of put it together. They haven't put it together in the right way. Think about it like cords, like your iPhone cord or whatever, getting all tangled. It's all tangled like this, and then like stuff doesn't work. So a lot of the people are using this opportunity to untangle the complexity of their organization, and it's a strategic priority because as they become successful, it's become more complicated. So focus on doing a couple things well versus a lot of things poorly. Confidently pick them so that you can maximize the limited resources that you have. Some people ask, it's like, well, how do I pick the strategic priorities that I have? Like, do I do those for the full 3 years? What if I accomplish them? That's an implementation question. But what I'll say is when you have the right goals within each strategic priority, you'll know if you've accomplished it or not. And don't quit until you've got it across the line. Some people say like, oh, I've got this organizational capacity strategic priority and I did an org chart and that's it, I'm done. It's like, no, did you really fulfill the intention that you had of that strategic priority? Or did you just let yourself off the hook after a couple of months because you didn't want to work on it anymore? It takes a long time to focus on these things, but that's why it requires the focus, the continuity on top of those priorities. So you're reviewing and saying, is this still relevant? Is this still what we need to be focusing on? And did we get it across the line? Once you got it across the line, let's say you accomplish one of these, then you can either add a new one or focus on getting these other two done. And so over the 3 years, if you did just one a year, your organization would be light years ahead, I guess is the better expression. So for us as a company, what we focus on is two things. One is helping your team accomplish your one destination. That's the main thing. First, we help figure out what it is, because if you don't know where you're going, how are you ever going to get there? And getting aligned on that vision, mission, values, strategic priorities, goals, and actions. So if you're looking for somebody to partner with you on that as an external person, be sure to reach out after. We're happy to have a conversation and like more of a personalized thing. And then if you know an organization that's like, oh man, they need to get aligned, they need to get clear. The CEO keeps complaining as people don't listen to him, then talk to us and we can help. So how do we do that? We do that. Our alignment program is either 2 days in person or virtual over 3 weeks. The one caveat is if you're a larger organization, probably, 30 million plus, you probably have some complexities that you need to deal with. You might need a third day. That's where we get into implementation risks, implementation constraints, communication plan, change management, and a core issue that you might be dealing with. Often market selection, differentiation, value proposition, that kind of stuff. Our implementation program. So once you do the alignment program, which is a prerequisite for everything, then we have our alignment program, and it comes in kind of 3 different flavors. Our accountability program, which focuses on monthly project calls and quarterly strategy reviews. So it's really just about that accountability to make sure you don't have a shelf plan, a plan that doesn't just like sit there and you say, oh yeah, we did it, but you never look at it again. By knowing that you have somebody come in to check in on the deliverables and to check in that you're aligned strategically, it'll help you maximize the investment in the first thing. But it'll also have everybody develop the muscle of strategic thinking. Our growth program is really exciting because it includes that monthly and quarterly project calls and quarterly reviews. But we also do 4 leadership training modules on the critical capacities. So we do one on communication interdependencies, living the values. What does it really mean? Goal tracking, monitoring, and then, another one that might be the best fit for your organization. We've got 13 different educational modules. And then our transformation. Oh, and that also includes coaching in the growth program. So you get 30 hours of discretionary time, and then you get 5 hours per month of coaching. Typically, it's for the CEO and the 3 strategic planning leads that are leading each strategic priority. And the last one is our transformation program. So we have everything in the growth program, but we do 10 leadership modules so that everybody has a common understanding, common frameworks. If you're looking for like management training for your leadership team, that's what we can provide. You also get 10 hours per month of discretionary coaching. And then also each of the plans includes stakeholder engagement sessions, 2 stakeholder engagement sessions, so that you can get your second level of leadership engaged and bought in to your strategic plan. Oh, and I knew it was going to happen at least one. What does it cost for our program? Our alignment program is $16,500 in person. That's for the 2 days. If you want a third day, it's an extra $4,000, so $20,500. Our implementation programs start at $2,000 a month. The ROI for you, like why we have this, it's going to save you thousands of hours saved by reducing duplicate or unnecessary work. It's going to improve your culture, communication, and clarity as an organization, and that's going to drive revenue and profit growth. So everything is about having like the right investment for your organization. It's putting that time, money, energy, and focus into your team to help you get to where you want to go. Now, before I dig into some of those questions that people were asking before, I just want to highlight that if you're leading strategic planning internally, or you're looking for somebody to lead it with you, I find the real value of strategy and having strategic planning offsites is just having the conversations. Every single session I have has people feeling lighter. If you've ever seen people run with a parachute on their back that's done for resistance and it slows them down, well, imagine like running at full speed and then chopping that, what's the word I was looking for? Parachute off, but it's a parachute from the back. It helps people move at speed because they don't have those doubts, wonders, worries in their head anymore. They're just like in the organization. They're focused on what they need to focus on. And it creates so much more engagement because they know what they need to do and how to move it forward. So if you're looking at doing strategic planning, I highly recommend make the time, make the energy, because it's going to make your team more engaged, more bought in, more clear and confident that they're doing the right thing to help move your organization forward. That's the value. So if you're interested in working together to support your team and leading future growth, be sure to reach out to us. I do want to make sure that I can go through like the core strategic planning agenda because I kind of promised that I would do that. Before I do that, are there any questions anybody want to drop into the chat, either about our programs or anything else before I go over the strategic planning process and then answer some key questions? Okay. So hopefully you can see, I'm just going to make sure that you can see. Yeah, that should be coming up there. No problem. So this is how we look at it, a 2-day offsite. I know now that people are getting back in person, the on-site meetings are happening more again. But we really look at strategic planning in 5 steps, and we try to keep it simple and easy to understand so that people who have never done strategy before can really like get it and buy into it. Actually, before I go into the agenda, somebody also asked me today, they said, hey, what about people who have never done strategy before? And I said, well, when I started SME Strategy about 12 years ago, I said, I foresee there being a gap in the market. I foresee that all of the baby boomers or all of the people who have been in senior leadership positions for a really, really long time are going to vacate for whatever reason. And it's going to create a gap in leadership teams. And owners and leaders are going to be forced to put their most senior people that are technically good in those roles. And it means that they're technically good, but they haven't had the years and decades of management and leadership. So they're put in a position where they need to lead people where they've never had to do it before. But they're being put in those positions because they're good at their skill. And so where I said, hey, as a company where we can fill that gap is provide that leadership training, that management training, that support for people that have never done it before. So I say that because we try to keep our strategy and alignment programs really simple so that anybody, even if you've never done strategic planning before, can understand it, can get it and buy in. So what are the 5 steps that we look at? And we do this also virtually. So virtually 5 sessions, in person over 2 days. Where are we now? So getting a good snapshot of where we're at, looking at celebrating. Most people don't look backwards to celebrate. They only look forward, and they often are critical. So setting the tone for a 2 days positively is super important. SWOT analysis, getting a good current state. PESTLE, looking at what's happening in the future so that we can navigate around it. Where are we going? Getting aligned on a 3-year vision and 3-year mission. Some people ask, why not do 5 years? The reason is because I find that the world is changing so much that 5-year plan, there would be too much dynamacy. The other thing is most people don't have the strategic capability to think 5 years down the road. So having it 3 years is far enough that it's strategic, but short enough that you can get into the operations pretty easy. What's going to get in our way? Values and behaviors. So setting up those clear values, and then risk analysis, identifying any and all risks that's going to get in your way. What do we need to do? Focusing on a couple priorities, focus on a couple things, do them well, and then cascade that into SMART goals. So many people ask, say, hey, are we going to get goals? Yes, it's probably the hardest part of the program because people don't like committing to things. But if you have a goal that's specific, then you're going to know what's going to move it forward and what's not going to move it forward. From a team perspective, your team is going to play more intentionally when there's a score being kept. And then how do we implement our plan? So we always look at creating a strategic plan such that it's going to get implemented. So we talk about actions and communication planning. What are the next steps, as well as touching on those critical capacities. For those of you that are, if you're consultants in the room, or if you're, leading strategy internal, most people focus so much on the planning and they don't put enough energy or resources to the implementation. But if you think for a 3-year plan, there's 2 days of planning, 1,100 days of implementation. Where is your resource allocation going? So if you're putting 20K into your planning, you should probably put like 100, 200K into your implementation. Otherwise, you're not going to get the results because planning is only part of it. So that's really what I want to share about that. It doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be hard, but it does need to be structured and organized in the right way. There's a video going around now that somebody recently made about like the kind of difference between strategy and planning. Strategy is the choices, planning is making the actions. Guys like me, strategy consultants, jammed them together and said, strategic planning is a thing. Where I think the difference between how we do things is that when we look at the market, when we look at how we position it, when we look at when we're going to win, and when we look at the actions that are needed to do that, then it truly is strategy and planning, not just a hybrid that doesn't make any sense. So for you and your teams, it's saying, do we have the right structure? Do we have the right system? Do we have the right bets? Do we have the right prioritization to get us to where we want to go? Perfect. So excellent. I'm just checking the chat here. Hi, everybody. Wonderful. So who to engage within? So I answer a couple questions here while we're here. If you want to come off video, ask a question, you totally can. One of the questions I got asked is who to engage to input within the organization. So there's a couple ways you can look at it. So first of all, when you look at strategic planning, highly recommend focusing on the senior leadership team because they're the ones doing the strategy. What some people have us do is we do stakeholder engagement on the front end so that we engage the middle managers, we engage other stakeholders as an input to the strategic plan. And then once we do the strategic planning session, then we roll it out to those middle managers or whoever did the stakeholder engagement so they can see themselves in the plan. I generally like front loading that buy-in because then it's instead of trying to push the plan on them and them kind of saying the same thing, you get their perspectives first, managers, etc. You do your strategic planning session so that it's considering all of those things and roll it out and they'll say, oh yeah, I see myself in that. We do that through surveys. We do that through interviews. We do that through stakeholder engagement sessions. So all of that can help. Will we see the slide deck for the session? No, you will not, because you don't need it. Great. Oh, I have a couple people who want the PowerPoint. Oh man. Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see if I want to do that. Let me just pull up some of the other questions that I had. So how do you develop and implement a 5-year strategic business plan? So I mentioned that already. We don't do 5-year. We do look at 3-year. The key thing is to have continuous updates on line of sight for your plan. So how we structure our implementation plans is we have monthly project calls. So we look within our strategic priorities and we say, hey, here are the individual projects and tasks that we're working on. Are we delivering those forward? Then we have the quarterly strategy review to say, is our strategic plan, is our strategic priorities still on track? Are we hitting our measures? Are they the right measures? Are we accomplishing the outcomes? Are we getting to some challenges there? So monthly operational, quarterly, take a step back and say, hey, are we still aligned? Are we still doing the right thing? Are we moving it forward? And having that balance of operational and strategic without, doing a full strategy review every quarter will help your team keep it top of mind, have it be relevant, and it'll help you actually get it across the line because you're building in the muscle or the repetition or the process of strategy implementation. Biggest challenge most organizations face with creating your strategic plan or implementing your strategic plan, it's not communication, it's not buy-in, it's not any of that stuff. Biggest challenge is time, is the urgency of the day-to-day things are going to get in the way. I can almost guarantee that on this call, some of you have had phone calls that you took, that you had emails that popped in, that you had something that distracted you from today's call, or some people who aren't on this call, we were watching the review, time zones notwithstanding, something urgent came up. Well, that happens in organizations all the time. Is the urgent of right now and what's right in front of us versus the kind of future benefit of working on the business is the thing that's going to get in the way. And then at scale. So being able to have that in the calendar, to have that booked in, and to build the fact that that is the priority is going to help you move forward. One of the things I say, working on the business versus in the business. Everybody's really good at working in the business, being busy. The harder part is working on the business to build the capacity, build the structure, and help you move forward. Why must the strategy align with the structure? Was a question I got. Is strategy itself is just figuring out where you want to go. And if the things you're doing aren't getting you to where you want to go, then why do them? And it sounds stupid and obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people do stuff just because they think they're supposed to be doing it. They should do it. Now, why that becomes a problem is if you don't know where you're going, then how are you going to get there? So that's the critical part of realigning on the vision and making sure that your priorities align with that vision. Perfect. Great. Somebody asked about scenario planning. I've got a video on scenario planning. I won't do that today. Can the strategic plan can be created as a starting point of the organization? Yes, absolutely. If it's like a brand new organization, I would do a business plan. If you're kind of in the middle of it, I would say, great, we are looking at it at this defined point in time versus this ideal point in time. So we would say August 11th, 2022, which is when this is being recorded. Where do we want to be August 11th, 2025? And we say, yep, from here to there, what's the gap? What's the chasm? What do we need to do to get us to where we want to go? Meg asks, and somebody probably wanted to just, what is the definition of structure? Structure can be a lot of different things, but if we go back to our critical capacities is, HR structure, people structure, communication structure, compensation structure, everything is a system. So if you don't have the right system to get you to where what your goals are, then you need to address your systems. But changing systems on their own or structures on their own doesn't make a difference if you don't know where you're going. Then it's just busy work. One of the things I see a lot also is when people have resistance to change. They're like, well, why should I do this? Why should I make these changes? He's like, yeah, it's a really good question. Why should you? If you don't have something big enough that is going to warrant people like doing that investment, then you're not going to get their buy-in. And it's another kind of, I don't know if the word is fallacy, but things that leaders don't do well is if they don't actually communicate why we're doing this, why we're making these changes, why we're putting these systems in place, then it's not going to move forward. So the last thing I'll share with you here, hopefully that makes sense. So CEOs, you need to do a good job, better job of explaining the why, not just the what. So the last thing I'll share with you today as a takeaway for you is this one destination scorecard. I'll drop the link in the chat. I'll send it to you in an email. Hopefully you'll get the recording at the same time. But I really love this tool. Well, one, because I designed it and I thought it was pretty good. But more accurately, is because it's a great way for you and your team to say, hey, where are we at? It's out of 100. So if you've got 80 or more, you're probably doing pretty great. If you're at 40 to 60, which is where we see most people, then you say, okay, there's probably some things to work on, but it's a great starting point as a conversation for your people to say, hey, are we aligned? Are we not aligned? And if we are aligned, are we assuming we're aligned? Does it imply that we're aligned, or is it explicit that we're aligned? So you can go through this. It's free to download. You can use it with your team, and you can say, hey, let's just begin a conversation around alignment. Most people have the same problems. They're not always wanting to share it. So this is a good way of looking at the process of alignment and talking about the structures in the system versus the person. It's not like, hey, as a CEO, you're not making us aligned. It's as a team, we're not aligned. So how do we solve the problem? How do we make the business plan proposal structure for organizations and other funders? Well, I think it's just like a business case. That was another question unrelated to this. I say, hey, we want to create this plan. We think that there's value in creating this plan. We think that there's going to be a big ROI of getting our team aligned, getting them focused, and it's going to cost, $20,000 to get our team together for a couple of days. Here's the outcomes. Here's the outputs. Here's what we want to work on. Hopefully that answers it. It's a very nuanced question, so it's kind of a broad answer. In our programs, just so you know, we include pre-work. We do interviews with all meeting participants. We do surveys with survey with all meeting participants, interview with key meeting participants. We facilitate the session. We provide a written recap in Word, PowerPoint. We provide you a one-pager infographic. Then we also provide follow-up calls to support that implementation, whether or not you are going to do an implementation program, just to help make sure the ball is rolling. Since y'all are still on the call, I'll give you another nugget. The biggest thing that we've instituted in our business that's made the biggest difference for teams is a 6-week follow-up. A 6-week follow-up post-session to say what's going well with the implementation, what's not going well with the implementation, what are some challenges that we're facing, what do we need to do to move forward. That's been a game changer for our clients. And I hate using the word game changer, but it truly has been, because after about 6 weeks, the initial rah wears off. And so often these leadership teams have actually accomplished way more success than they realize, but their brains just say, oh yeah, we're not doing good. And so by putting that in place, it gives them an opportunity to celebrate. Yeah, in the past 6 weeks, we've actually done this, and we're a lot more on the path towards success than we know. And so it's been a really, really cool thing for us to see. And again, the goal is to help our clients, help you get to where you want to go as an endpoint for your strategy. So we're coming to the top of the hour here. Happy to answer any more questions. Just for y'all to think about logistically, we're booking easily into October now. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to prepare for the whole strategic planning process. So if you're wanting to book, you just go to SMEstrategy.net. You can reach out to us there, have a conversation. Happy to support you and help you get to where you want to go. So I'll stick around for another couple questions if there is anything in the chat. Otherwise, I hope that today's been valuable. I hope you got some good stuff out of it. It's really cool to see. I think it's got the growing complexity with leadership teams and the infinite opportunities out there really pulls for strategic planning, for prioritization, for alignment. And so we're grateful to be part of it in the community, in the world, and helping your leadership teams get to where you want to go. So thanks for being here. I'm going to turn off my video, but if you want to ask a question in the chat, please feel free. Once again, SMEstrategy.net. We've got a podcast where we interview CEOs. We got about one of those a week. We've got our Leaders Digest email. If you haven't seen that yet, we're bi-weekly. We're doing a core issue facing CEOs and leadership teams to help them really problem solve those issues. And everything at the heart of it is to be able to help them get to where they want to go in these kind of challenging economic and business environments. So appreciate y'all. Great to see you. See you again. Don't hesitate to reach out. And I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.